The Jewish Channel's Week in Review. Rockets bombarding southern Israel, exploring ritual boundaries, Veterans Day with Jewish vets, and more of the Jewish news that's changing your world right now in this episode of the Week in Review. Hello, and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. More than 150 rockets have been fired into Israel from Gaza since Saturday night, according to various reports. Mortars from Syria have also landed in northern Israel. Thus far, no Israelis have been reported injured, though there has been damage to a number of buildings in Israel. As we go to air, Israel has stopped short of a full-blown invasion of Gaza in response, choosing instead to respond with Air Force attacks. The Israeli Air Force says it has bombed several weapons caches. Israeli Army radio has said one of the possible responses if rocket attacks from Gaza continue would be for the Israelis to engage in targeted assassination of Hamas commanders. Leaders of various Gaza groups met on Tuesday and released a statement saying they'd cease fire if Israel, quote, stops its aggression against Gaza. Shortly after that meeting, multiple rockets were fired from Gaza, landing in the Israeli town of Sderot, causing no injuries or structural damage. While there has been no clear statement from Hamas leaders or groups in Gaza about why these attacks are happening now, the current political atmosphere of a re-elected president in the United States and an ongoing Israeli electoral campaign for an election less than 90 days from now are sure to be major elements in the thinking of Hamas and other groups. Of course, the ongoing military activity is already a political issue, with leaders of various parties making their suggestions as to what should or should not be Israel's response. Labor Party leader Shelley Yachimovich has said no full-scale operation should take place before the elections. Kadima Party leader Shaul Mofaz is calling for targeted assassinations. The rocket attacks on Israel are also coming as Israel and the United States are completing a training exercise designed to strengthen Israel's ability to fend off missile attacks. The exercise began in late October and continued through this past week, concluding with a joint test launch of Patriot missiles over the Mediterranean. With an estimated total of 3,500 military personnel from Israel and the United States participating, it is considered the largest joint military exercise between the two countries ever. In other Israel news, growing ultra-Orthodox influence has affected many institutions in the Jewish state, and one area that is less often discussed is the ultra-Orthodox impact on health issues. In the current Israeli government, the deputy health minister is a member of the Ultra-Orthodox United Torah Judaism Party, a cancer screening advocacy organization trying to increase screenings in the ultra-Orthodox community. Recently approached the deputy health minister, Rabbi Yaakov Litzman, and asked if he would undergo a screening for colon cancer to help promote these efforts. The deputy health minister refused the offer of a cancer screening, saying he'd recite Psalms instead, according to Israeli newspaper Yediot Ahronot. The advocacy group was also reportedly rebuffed by ultra-Orthodox websites and newspapers, which refused to run ads containing any of the words colon, rectum, or cancer. Speaking of how Orthodox Jews interact with their local environment, one major point of emphasis in contemporary Judaism is the Eruv, a ritual boundary that allows Sabbath-observant Jews to carry within it on the Jewish Sabbath. A major exhibition exploring the concept of the Eruv is underway, as Christian Needon reports.
The role of the Eruv and its place in Jewish culture through the years is being explored in a new exhibition at Yeshiva University Museum called It's a Thin Line. And as part of that exhibition, a symposium was conducted on the history and mystery of the Eruv. I asked its moderator, Rabbi Adam Mintz, for his take on the role of the Eruv in modern Jewish life.
The Eruv allows Jews to carry on Shabbat. Now, what does that mean? So throughout history, it's meant really two things. One thing is that the Eruv allowed people to carry on Shabbat. People who were carrying anyway, it kind of allowed them to avoid the prohibition of carrying on Shabbat. But I think today that's kind of a little antiquated. Today, the idea of the Eruv is to allow people, families to more greatly enjoy Shabbat.
Symposium panelist Professor Jeffrey Gurak is the author of Jews in Gotham, and he noted the importance of an exhibition about Eruv.
It's metaphorical for understanding how Jews in different ages, in different cultures, in different places lived in their geographical settings. And it's a great history lesson that I think is important for people to enjoy. And it's very well done. And it's not only contemporary stuff, but there's medieval and ancient materials. So you get the whole sweep of Jewish history through the metaphor of a device which if we walk through the city of New York, we couldn't even see where the Eruv is, and yet it has tremendous power, and has always had power within Jewish life.
Exhibit curator Zachary Paul Levine took me on a tour, beginning with an Eruv canister donated by Lincoln Square Synagogue in Manhattan.
These types of canisters, there are about 200 of them around the Upper West Side, attached to light poles. They are pretty much indistinguishable from what you would see if you're walking around the street. This one came from the entrance to Central Park at West 76th Street. It's painted the same type of forest green that you'd see on all the light poles in the park. And they're not really used anymore, these gates. They're just kind of there.
The exhibit also highlights Israeli efforts to create Eruvs.
So the poster to my left is a 1936 poster appealing for donations to maintain the Eruv in Jerusalem. And we've juxtaposed it with this painting from 1937 from the artist Ludwig Bloom. It's a Jerusalem panorama. Jerusalem in many ways is kind of the place where there was the first Eruv. It comes out of the book of Jeremiah, where he tells the people of Jerusalem not to carry through the gates on the Sabbath.
Jewish immigrants brought the tradition of the Eruv to New York City.
We're looking at a blow-up for the Eruv for New York from 1907. What you see is a line going south to north, which is the 3rd Avenue elevated train. This map was created by Rabbi Joshua Siegel, and he identified the L as the western border and all of the seawalls as the eastern, northern, and southern borders for that Eruv. Virtually all of Jewish life at that time was located in the Lower East Side and along the East Side.
To hear more about the implications of Eruv on Jewish communities, please tune into the full broadcast edition of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Christian. This past week saw observance of Veterans Day here in the United States. Meredith Gansman profiles Jewish veterans of recent conflicts.
They were less than thrilled.
Why? The implied question being, what'd you mess up?
What's a nice Jewish boy like yourself doing in the Army?
These were the typical responses these Jewish veterans heard when explaining their choice to join the U.S. military. Jews serving in the armed forces are, as the website Jews in Green says, among the few and the proud. Of the 1.5 million total service members, only a few thousand of them identify as being Jewish. That means Jews join the military at a rate of about 1/4 that of the general American population. Compare that to Jewish service in World War II, when Jews were more likely to serve than the average American. So what's it like to be one of those rare Jews in today's Army?
During basic training at the first in-processing station, you had the information that goes onto your dog tag. So they were verifying your name and your blood type and your religion, and as well as your social security number. And we were standing in a formation, probably about 60, 70 people, and we were going through the ranks, and everybody was reading off their name and their social security number, their blood type, and their religion. And as I was in the second to last row, and as we kind of went through, I realized that no one before me said Jewish, sort of every version of Christian and non-denominational.
Jordana Malik joined the National Guard in 2002 following the 9/11 attacks. Her first experiences were of isolation.
When it became my turn, I verified my information, and I felt like it got quiet. That's sort of like that uncomfortable silence where no one really knows what to say next. And then I thought, oh, well, maybe I'm just imagining it. And then afterwards, so we went back later on that evening back to the barracks, and I was approached by two women that said to me, so, you're Jewish. And I thought, I was a little bit hesitant. I didn't really know where the conversation was gonna go, not knowing their backgrounds at all. And they just kind of looked at me, and one of them said, well, wow, I've never met a Jewish before.
Malik went on to become a Jewish lay leader at Bagram Air Base, providing some of the organization and support that was missing without an official chaplain. She led weekly Shabbat services complete with military-style matzo ball soup.
I made matzo ball soup every week over a burner with the mix, and we used powdered eggs and oil that was sent from seas, and the Manischewitz mix and the soup mix. And usually we'd get some onions or carrots and stuff from the chow hall, and we would boil it over a propane tank that I was able to use my logistics background to acquire.
Malik said her military experience helped her better understand her attachment to Judaism.
I think in a lot of ways it did solidify for me what is important about Judaism and about Jewish observances. I light candles because my mother lit candles and my grandmother lit candles and my great-grandmother lit candles, and the ritual itself is important to me. the specific requirements and adherence to the time, that's not so significant.
Army Reserve Master Sergeant Benari Poulton said it also strengthened his sense of Jewish connection.
It provided so much spiritual support, and it opened me up to an entire community of people who were there. And we were in similar situations, and suddenly you're not alone. And suddenly there's nothing wrong with sitting down for Shabbat dinner on a Friday night in a combat zone in a country that's war-torn and not friendly towards Jews. That is the reward for that is incalculable.
For First Lieutenant Gavin Ellman, serving in Iraq helped him to connect with Judaism in new ways.
To build a sukkah in the desert of Babylon, and to consider the protection that it provides while you're getting rocketed at night is a completely different experience. It's one thing to talk about here and to imagine yourself in that situation and try to feel that vulnerability, but you can't capture that here. Like you can capture, it's enforced upon you overseas.
To hear more from these Jewish military vets, tune into the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Meredith. Finally, ancient Jewish texts are practically teeming with episodes in which God approached Jewish men and asked them to write something down. It's been thousands of years since any Jew claimed to have been approached by God to write a new book, but that's precisely what comedy writer and former executive producer of The Daily Show, David Javerbaum, says was his experience in writing The Last Testament, a memoir by God, co-written by David Javerbaum. Javerbaum has won 12 Emmy Awards, co-wrote America the Book and Earth the Book, and co-wrote two of the most iconic award show moments in recent years, the Tony Award song Broadway, It's Not Just for Gays Anymore, and the Emmy Award song TV is a Vast Wonderland. But as he explained in an interview with me, collaborating with God was a different matter entirely. Here are the highlights. So, David, this is some pretty deeply religious comedy. I mean, you're not just tossing off simple aphorisms about religion. You're really digging deep into religion when you're making this comedy.
Yes, well, that's what you can do when you're working with God. You have access to all that information and all the backstory. Of course, a lot of it is in the Old Testament anyway, but of course, part of the book is to reveal some never-before-heard accounts of that crucial era in history.
What were we missing in the Old Testament? What didn't we learn about?
Well, some of the things you mentioned, you'll see in the book, for example, are that it was Adam and Steve originally, not Adam and Eve. People who say that it was not Adam and Steve are actually factually wrong. And so we talk about what happened there. Truth about Noah. Noah did not actually have two of every animal on the ship. He had two of one kind of animal, which was a puppy, two puppies. And that was just to be nice. Sparky and Pillow were their names. And then he takes you all through the history of the Old Testament and the New Testament, which I don't know if people on this channel might be aware of, but there is another actual testament, a new one. The Quran.
We're still catching up.
Yeah. There's a whole other guy. So yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful story, and he wanted to get it out before December 21st of this year, when the world ends.
So you think that God's with the Mayans on that one?
He has chosen to be with the Mayans. He has, even though they don't worship him, obviously they worship a lot of different ones. He has a people crush on them. So yes.
But what got you started with this? This started as a Twitter account, the Tweet of God. And
actually, it's not quite true. The Twitter account was conceived as an adjunct to this.
Okay.
The book was begun a couple of years ago, and shortly thereafter, my editor and publisher encouraged me to have a Twitter account for it, which I regarded as a total pain in the butt and something that would be just take away from what I was writing, because I was simultaneously writing the book. But as it happened, the Twitter account has been very successful in its own right and now has 170,000 followers. And God tweets on it a lot. And my only role in those tweets is I type them and I send them. But obviously I don't write them.
And some of what you're remarking on is some of the stuff that kind of has baffled on the Jewish side, the traditional commentators for millennia now. The kinds of weirdness in the double narratives and things that seem to happen twice, or things that were different characters, different
The weird
names.
things that almost imply that a group of human beings acting collectively wrote it together about 3,000 years ago, rather than the truth, which is that God himself wrote it with Moses over a course of a weekend.
But what do you think of those who try to who try to read the Bible in different ways, who try to read the Bible as, where they become, either talking about a continual revelation or trying to say that we can kind of minimize the bad and keep the good. Do you think that there's a legitimate...
Any interpretation of the world based on any interpretation of the Bible is silly, no matter how liberal it is. It doesn't matter. It was just a book. Mm-hmm. It was just a book. There's no reason to base your life on that. And the fact that that's a minority opinion is disturbing to me.
You can see the full interview with David Javerbaum under the weekly news category on the Jewish Channel On Demand on cable. That's all for this week. From all of us here at the Jewish Channel, be well. The Jewish Channel is available on cable. Time Warner Cable Channel 528, IO Optimum Channel 291, RCN Channel 268, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, Cox Channel 1, Frontier Communications, and now on Comcast Cable in the on-demand menu under Premium Channels. For more information, visit tjctv.com.